Hi everyone, my name is Aracelis Torres and I'm going to be talking to you about melanoma skin cancer. This is very important to me because my boyfriend had a close call with this and it also runs in his family. He had a mole on his back and it was very itchy. It had all the signs of a melanoma carcinoma, but thankfully that wasn't the case. So let's get right into it. So on this slide, you see the layers of the human skin, and it's very interesting because basically, what is melanoma? So you see where this says epidermis. The epidermis is the outermost layer of your skin, and then you have the dermis and the hypodermis. Later in the slideshow, I will talk about why these layers are important and how melanoma affects these layers. But melanoma is basically the extra growth of abnormal cells. This will be known as the melanocytes. Basically, I'm tan, and my melanocytes are in charge of my pigmentation. And when these cells go out of whack or grow crazy, and it damages your DNA and it cannot be repaired, so then you end up having melanoma skin cancer. And then how do you get it? Now, it's not like, oh, you can cause this it's an overtime thing. So it can be genetics, it can be being exposed to the sun too much, the UV lights, tanning beds, and also what you eat. Now I found this very interesting because I watched this video when I was doing my research about this woman who was talking about kind of a conspiracy theory about melanoma skin cancer, or just skin cancer in general. Her claim was that because our ancestors spent so much time in the sun, scavenging for food, hunting, and all that stuff, that there wasn't really a chance of them getting skin cancer, and how skin cancer is kind of a new development in recent years, maybe like 60 years or so. And she believes that it has a lot to do with the foods that they were eating. So I thought that was interesting. Maybe food can be a preventative way to prevent skin cancer, and maybe even a whole bunch of other things. That could be like the holistic route, I would say. Other types of skin cancer would be basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and Merkel cell carcinoma. I'm not sure if I said those right. I hope I did. But we won't be talking about those. And yes, it looks very, very gross, especially the squamous cell carcinoma. It looks very, very infected, and it just has an ulcer, which I will talk about later as well. But I will just be talking about melanoma. But the other ones are important to know because they are the most common to get. Melanoma isn't as common, and they're also very invasive as well. So there are different stages of melanoma. And so in stage 1, it's only in the upper layer. As you can see, it's in the epidermis in the picture. It's not considered invasive because it's only confined to that one area. Basically, it's kind of like a birthmark almost. And maybe it has a color, maybe it doesn't. But the treatment for this would be a biopsy where they just remove it and they'll send it to a lab and do testing on it. So stage 1 is it's in the epidermis and the dermis. You can kind of see that in stage 1 right there in the picture. I love this picture because it gives a very good illustration of it. It's considered to be invasive because now it's growing. It's still localized, but it's getting past that. And the treatment is, again, a biopsy or a wide localization exertion, I think that's what it's called, where they kind of just remove it, send it to the lab, and do testing on it. And then stage 2 is similar to stage 1, but it can also have an ulceration. And it's kind of like an open wound. It looks really gross, kind of close to the squamous cell carcinoma picture that we saw before in the slide. Here, I'll show you right here. Like that. I know it looks gross, but... And then we have stage 3, and in the picture it shows that it's past the dermis. Now it spreads to the lymph nodes. And this is where it gets kind of scary because once it spreads to the lymph nodes, this is where the treatment gets a little bit more complicated. You do a lymph node biopsy or a complete lymph node dissection. And then we have stage 4, which is where you can see in the picture, it's beyond the lymph nodes. this is where it's very invasive. It spreads to the brain, lungs, the bone, and then even the intestines, and it can just go all over your body, and it's ridiculous. The treatment for this is surgery or radiation, kind of like most other cancers where you see that they have chemical therapy, radiation basically. And then here, we're going to talk about how it's diagnosed. So this is my favorite one. So in this picture, it kind of shows the development of it. It's going from right to left. So first, it can just look like kind of just like the same pigmentation of your skin, just a little bit darker. So what they do first is if you notice it early on, they'll do a biopsy of it. So they'll kind of like punch a hole, or I've seen some videos where they'll just kind of like cut it off. But if it's underneath the layer, then they'll punch a hole kind of, and they'll send it to the lab. Signs to look for is if it's itchy, changes in color, changes in shape and size. This is basically the ABCDEs. So the A stands for asymmetry. So if you're able to cut it in half, we'll draw a line through it. And if it's symmetrical on both sides, then that's a sign that it could just be benign. But if it's asymmetrical, then that's definitely a sign of melanoma. And then the B stands for the border. Are the borders rigid? Are they straight? In these pictures, you can kind of see that the borders are very rigid. They're not straight at all. And then, of course, the C is for color. It has different pigmentations because, again, the melanocytes are in charge of pigmentation. And that's kind of where the melanoma gets its pigmentation from and different coloring from, is when those melanocytes go out of whack and grow at rapid rates, and then the body can't fix that. And then for D, you have diameter, or if it's dark. And in the third one, in the middle one, you see that it's very dark, and it has a lot of red, a lot of black in its pigmentation, and then also it's very wide diameter wise. And so yeah, thank you so much for listening to my presentation about melanoma skin cancer, and I hope you really enjoy this. I hope that this helps you look for the signs, and even about the other ones, the other 3 skin cancers, because those are also very important. Maybe do some research on those. And I'll see you another time. Bye.